What is up, everybody? Yours truly, Air Raid Mike, your host of the Air Raid Attack podcast, which is your home of the unscripted, unfiltered, 100% authentic podcast. Just a little FYI for all you out there, you have 13 days. Yes, that's right, 13 days till Christmas. So definitely get your Christmas shopping at least wrapped up. No pun intended. But you only have 13 days. So just a friendly reminder on that one. But first and foremost, always listen to us on all major podcast platforms and join the live feed during all live shows on YouTube. Simply search Air Raid Attack Podcast. If you're watching this now, it's at Air Raid Attack Podcast. Pretty simple. Without further ado, before we get to today's show, guess what? We're going to be talking some college football. Florida State, Georgia, who truly got snubbed. Of course, college football realignment. And, you can't talk without the Heisman. Yes, the Heisman Trophy winner was rewarded this past weekend, and so much more. That and more. Hey, we got a fun one, and you don't want to miss out on this one. So buckle up. It's time to air it out. Let's go. What is up, everybody? Mike here, and joining me. So last week, if you tuned in or if you even listened to the podcast episode last week, we had my good buddy, Mr. Casey himself, and part of the Message Board Geniuses podcast. So we're going to make this a 2 for 2 this week. So joining me is also on the Message Board Geniuses podcast and had a very entertaining coffee mug story, which we'll get to maybe in a bit under our live topics. Who really knows? But now, without further ado, Miss Dailey Joy, how are you doing this evening?
I am great, Mike. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. It's a tough act to follow Casey, but I'm going to do my best.
As I always tell Casey, he's just a tough act to follow, period. I understand some people say they talk a lot, but, when it comes to Casey, with all due respect, I just let him take over and just let him run with the show.
It's a good call to make. I always follow Casey every week. We have like an order in the way that we go about things, and I always am following Casey. So I tend to be a little less talkative and a little more short-winded because I have to follow the paragraphs on paragraphs that Casey speaks on a weekly basis.
Well, I applaud you. You guys are doing a great work, and Casey's a good guy, and it's exciting to have you on as well. Tell the listeners a little about yourself, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so originally from Louisiana, went to LSU, worked in LSU football recruiting while I was there. Have always loved college football. I think my parents knew she might have a problem when I skipped my freshman year homecoming to watch the LSU Alabama game.
Lovely.
And also really yelled at our administration and was like, why did y'all put homecoming on the LSU Alabama game? But yeah, I have just always been obsessed. Worked in sports for a little while when I got out, worked for the NFL and ran NFL flag for a little while. Nice. And then completely transitioned out, and I work in finance now. So literally opposite end of the spectrum. And I live in Atlanta, and I don't have any pets or anything because keeping myself alive is a full-time job. And so that is literally all that I do.
I know you said you skipped homecoming for Alabama LSU. How did your parents take that?
They're totally fine. My mom was like, we don't have to buy, my mom was like, we don't have to buy a dress. And my dad was like, I don't have to worry about anyone crazy taking my daughter to a dance, number one. But number two, oh, my daughter likes sports. That's cool. So yeah, they were completely fine. They didn't have to take me. They didn't have to pick me up. I mean, it worked out for everyone.
As men, I could see where that would because we all, I'm sure everybody has heard the story of what could happen on homecoming. So, that's always a calm and collective one. But
yeah, nothing was happening at my homecoming dances. My dad was our high school basketball coach.
Nice.
And He had a lot of foreign exchange students. Many of them were like 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", all from like different countries in Africa. And so every guy at the school knew like Coach Foster will kill me, but so will Coach Foster's players. So if anything was happening at homecoming, it was not happening with me. I was protected and guarded 24/7, 365. So.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah, looking back now, it's a blessing. In high school, I was embarrassed, but what can you do?
Hey, you're the coach's daughter. I mean, it comes with the territory. How about that?
It does. It does.
But of course, being an alum, we kick things off. The Heisman Trophy was presented this past week, and of course, in my opinion, no surprise here. I know some probably said probably otherwise, but who really knows? But Jaden Daniels, of course, was too good to be overlooked when it came to the Heisman. Of course, the first Heisman Trophy winner since 1996, rewind, 2016, to win the Heisman Trophy and not play for a conference championship. But obviously, you'd be a little homer, and rightfully so. I think he won it outright. I know some people say the playoff committee missed it, but the Heisman committee missed it.
I mean, okay, no matter what answer I give you, people are going to say like, well, she's just an LSU homer.
Right.
I think that if you look at the stats, they speak for themselves. And the part of this that everyone wants to forget is that it's not, as much as it has been in the past, it's not a team award. And thankfully, the voters of the Heisman actually treated it as an individual player award. And because of that, Jaden Daniels won outright, as he should have. For the people that want to accuse him of stat padding, we can go into like strength of schedule if we want to, but there are many teams that Washington played this year that weren't great either. And
still not.
Yeah, exactly. And Michael Penix was able to really rack up some stats. And then there were also some games that, this is the part that I think no one talks about that I am so adamant about, is that there were games that Michael Penix absolutely did not show up for. There were games that if it was not for Washington's defense, they would not have won games. That wasn't the case with Jaden Daniels. The reality of it is that if LSU didn't have Jaden Daniels as their quarterback, they maybe win 3 or 4 games. He was single-handedly the best player on the field every game that he stepped into play. And so, yeah, I 100% think the committee got it right. I think Penix finishing second was correct. Nixon third, Marvin. I think like literally every single spot was handled correctly. The only reason I was more confident going in after the Pac-12 championship, if Bo Nix would have won the Pac-12 championship, I would have been a little bit more nervous, just because I think if you go back in and beat the school that already beat you, that says something. And so I was a little bit nervous about that, but after they lost, I was like, there's no way that they give this to Penix. I was pretty confident in that. Of course, watching the College Football Playoff Committee really screw up didn't actually increase my confidence, but I just had to hope that the voters got it right.
Well, we'll definitely talk about that because I'm definitely interested in your opinion on that. But no, I think you're right. I think the committee of the Heisman committee, I believe, got it right. I mean, if you look at his stats and you nailed it. I mean, again, he accounted for 50 combined touchdowns. I mean, the dude combined just individually close to 5,000 total yards, I believe, or close darn near to it in 12 games. I mean, that's just insane numbers. And yes, LSU isn't the LSU that we may know of, especially during the Les Miles years. But again, I mean, it is LSU. I know people want to say, well, now you're saying that because OU's going to go to the SEC next year. But it's the best conference in football. It don't matter if Oklahoma was going to the SEC ever. I mean, the truth is in the pudding. So, for what Jaden did this year is beyond amazing. And again, he's a fifth-year player, I believe. Of course, the transfer, I think, out of Arizona State. And what's funny is the fact that if you go back, I think one of his former players at Arizona State posted a video, and I'm not going to say all the words because there was some curse words in it, but practically they were laughing at him because he cleared out his locker and said, well, that's good anyway. He sucked. That's not what he said, but practically that's, get that crap out of here. He sucked anyway. Who cares? And then here he comes down to Baton Rouge and a year or two later and wins the Heisman. So, congrats to him. Well worth it. I think Michael Penix, great year, but I'm going to say this, and we'll talk on this about, of course, the committee with the playoff, but phenomenal athlete. I don't know how much of a career he'll have in the NFL. Who really knows? I mean, look, we grabbed Jerry Judy, and we thought we had something, and he's struggling, but with Denver. But I don't think Washington deserves to be in the playoff anyway. But we'll talk about that. But no, I think the Heisman committee won it fair and square, and I think congrats to Jay on a phenomenal year, and of course winning Heisman, first time since Joe Burrow just a few years back. No long stint.
Yeah, a little bit different of a year for sure than our last Heisman winner. But look, if there's one thing we can celebrate about this year, it's Jaden, and it does, as much as everyone wants to talk about it, doesn't matter. It does matter. It helps in recruiting.
Absolutely.
It really does. I remember when I was going to LSU thinking if I'm an offensive player, I would never want to play at LSU. And looking back at 2019 and how that has completely and totally shifted the culture and the belief system about our program, to get another player of that caliber to come in and play quarterback in honestly a pretty short span of time. We had Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels, and really close together seasons. I think it says a lot about how far LSU's come offensively. Now, if we could just not have gone back 20 years defensively, I would have greatly appreciated that. But here's to hoping that we can somehow even it out.
I am going to ask you this because it was an interesting storyline, more kind of laughter. What was up? What was your takes, and what was up with Chip Kelly's wonderful not Chip Kelly,
Brian Kelly.
Thank you. I'm thinking of Chip because I'm thinking of UCLA that
you
you guys play next year. What's up with Brian Kelly when he was dancing with the recruits? Have you ever seen?
Look,
what was going on with that?
I don't know. But I do have a take about Brian Kelly that I think a lot of people aren't considering and don't really want to hear. And it's this. When he was at Notre Dame, I didn't like him either.
No.
I have zero issue saying that. And I have zero issue saying that when we hired him at LSU, I hated the hire. I was one of those people that was I was angry. I was not about it. Right. I was done. I was I'm done. Obviously I came around, but because I love the program more than I care about who our coach is. But I do think this Notre Dame, their school and their program and their culture is very uptight and buttoned up and sophisticated. And there is a certain persona that head coach has to carry. And I even think you've seen some of Marcus Freeman's personality almost die down a little bit since he took the head coaching job. When he got hired, there was the video of him walking in the locker room and he was the players coach and everybody's all excited. Yes. And I think that that is who Marcus Freeman is, but he's now, because he's become the head coach, he's buttoned up a little bit. You're not seeing as much of that personality. It's not who he is. And I think one great thing about LSU is we give you complete and total freedom to be who you are and to let your personality come out. I think Brian Kelly is hey, look, this is where I'm going to end my career. And if I'm in my career here, I'm going to have fun while I'm doing it. Yep. And that's what he's doing. And so if that means he wants to dance with a recruit, then let him freaking dance with the recruit. If that means he wants to say family in an accent, I didn't even hear it. I don't even understand how that whole thing even came about. But if that's what he wants to do, ultimately, I care what he puts on the field. I care about the products that he puts on the field. I care about what recruiting classes he signs. And if he's winning and he's recruiting well and he's putting staff around him that knows how to recruit, and I'm seeing growth and maturity in our program. I mean, I think LSU fans have short-term memory loss. I'm do y'all not remember when our old coach was mouthing off at fans and then got beat by 30? That was embarrassing. And I'm so other fans can be embarrassed of our program. I don't care. If we beat you on Saturday, that's really all that matters to me. So I really could give a flip if he dances with the recruit. Dance all you want. Just win the freaking games.
I don't have an issue with it. I just thought it's funny the coordination between the camera, the rim, and his little whatever 19.
I mean,
that was off. But I thought it was cool. I mean,
what do you expect?
Yeah, I mean, he's mid 50s, up close to 60s. I'm sure if he's not in his 60s. I mean, he's relating to 18-year-old kids. I mean, come on.
Yeah. And here's the deal. Like, all coaches are trying to be relevant, especially in this era of college
Yep.
football with where everything's going on social media and everything's getting posted and all coaches are doing it. Brian Kelly's a really easy target to make fun of. I know that because I've made fun of him.
We all have.
But I can make fun of every coach in America if I really took the time and wanted to. I just
I mean,
have much time on my hands.
well, I mean, we're talking about Brian Kelly and his dancing skills. I mean, and you're right. We can make fun of every coach because I mean, I could easily sit there and say, well, our coach apparently can't run through a tunnel correctly. I mean, and then gets trampled on. Now, I was at the game. What was funny is I never noticed he trampled, so I don't know what happened if he fell over his own feet or what in the world happened. But I'm glad he was all right because.
Yeah, I mean, every coach has something funny. I mean, it is what it is.
I mean, look at Lincoln Riley. He's scared. And which, by the way, I'm not for sure if you saw a 24 schedule, but you guys do start off with Lincoln Riley.
I already have a hotel booked in Las Vegas.
There you go, Lincoln. Have fun with that one.
I will be going.
And we're talking schedules real quick. The 2024 SEC schedule release is officially tomorrow, 6 p.m. Mm-hmm. For all you SEC and college football fans, I'll be tuning in, obviously. Oklahoma goes to Baton Rouge. We do not know when next year. Hopefully, it's a night game. That'd be pretty dope. We do know OU plays Ole Miss on the 26th of October, Alabama on the 23rd of October, 23rd of November, and start off with Tennessee the 21st. What do you recommend to all the Sooner fans? Places to eat, stay. What should we look out for? What should we do and not do down there? You know, because it's obviously new territory for us.
No, for sure. I think that the greatest thing that you can do is, like, first of all, is just like, do not eat at a chain restaurant. Like, whatever you do, don't eat at a chain. Unless I do make one exception to that rule. And there is a seafood restaurant called Dragos. It's actually originated in New Orleans, but they just built a Baton Rouge location. I would say within like the last couple of years. They're so known for their seafood. I specifically love their char grilled oysters. Mm-hmm. But around the corner from Dragos is actually a place called Phil's. I worked there in college. It is a hole in the wall, but it is phenomenal seafood. It's just small. So like you would have to get there kind of early, but right. Their food is absolutely phenomenal. You really, honestly, if you're like eating in a restaurant in Baton Rouge, it's really hard to go wrong. Just because there's so many, if it's like seafood and it's Cajun and it's around campus, I would suggest eating there. It's just hard to go wrong food wise. Just because everything is good. And I don't say that lightly, everything's good, but in terms of places to stay, don't stay downtown. 10 out of 10 do not recommend staying downtown. It's a little bit sketchy.
Oh, snap.
But, and I would not recommend staying on the north side of campus. So if you're going to stay anywhere, stay on the south side of campus, the north side of campus. If anyone is like driving in from Oklahoma, they would act and like put LSU as their destination. They would actually drive through the north side of campus. I actually lived on the north side of campus in a dorm, and I was on like the sketchy side of campus.
Interesting.
So the north side of campus is really not nice, but everything else is. So anything other than the north side of campus, I would recommend. And honestly, just like get there early, experience it all. Mm-hmm. There is always a stage and a concert going on, like 6 or 7 hours before kickoff, in front of the PMAC, which like the PMAC and the stadium face each other. So you can go and there will be drinks and there will be food. If you just walk, because Oklahoma has never come to LSU.
No.
Like our fans will be so excited about that. So like when I tell you, if you're just walking and you like smile or wave at an LSU fan, they're going to be like, do you want something to eat? Like that's just.
Snap.
So get there early, walk around, like get the full experience. I'm pretty sure they would make that a night game. I can't see that being a noon or an afternoon game, especially with the whole CBS thing going away. I would expect it to be a night game. And so, yeah, just get there early, go to pregame, like get in the stadium early, hear Colin Baton Rouge, hear Louisiana Saturday night, even though it's not like your traditions.
Right.
It is an SEC football tradition, and it's what makes Saturday night in Death Valley so cool. So just get there early and experience it all. Like the earlier, the better.
No, I like that because it is a new tradition when it comes to obviously for Oklahoma, but and for our step brothers down in Austin. But it's anyway. So it's gonna be a fun time. But no, and of course what you said earlier. It's a different era of college football, which leads to this question for you: is what's your thoughts on this new college football era? Of course, we're talking college football realignment. Of course, that does involve Oklahoma and Texas to the SEC next year. Of course, I ain't gonna repeat all everybody, but of course, the Big Ten practically took all of the Pac-12 except for two, and the ACC felt the need to take the two smarter schools in the Pac-12, and I mean, I'm not making fun of it. It's the truth. Cal and Stanford are pretty smart people, and I respect the heck out of the programs. But what's your thoughts on where we're at in college football, and is it for the good, or are we about to run into a really train wreck situation here?
Oh, that's such a loaded question.
It is, yeah.
Um, I think that there's good and bad of it, just like there is with everything. I think that there are certain parts of it that are great. I like the Texas and Oklahoma coming to the SEC. I think it only makes us stronger. I'm excited that it's going to ignite some rivalries in the SEC that have been dead for a little while. I'm also very, very excited that Texas and A&M can have their rivalry back because I'm so sick of A&M. I'm like, please take them. We're so over them. So I'm excited.
Now you know how we felt in the Big 12.
Oh my God. I'm like, please, like, I'm begging you. And like, I'm a little sad now that Jimbo's not there because he was just such an easy target to hate on. But yeah, I'm just like, please take them. But I like that aspect of it. I think that that's good for college football. And I like that we added people to our conference that actually geographically fit in our conference, unlike a lot of the other conferences. The thing that I don't like about some of it is that there were commissioners and athletic directors and conversations being said about how this is what's best for the sport and this is what's best for our school. And while that's great, this is not what's best for a lot of student athletes. You can't convince me that USC student athletes can get on a plane on a Friday and fly wherever, play a game on Saturday, fly home on Sunday, and then go to school on Monday. And they're all exhausted from all of that travel and time changes. And if you think that that's not going to affect the way that kids play games, I have a hard time. I'm going to argue with you because it's just not true. And I just think that it's moronic to say that it was about anything other than money, because that's what it was about. You put money over the well-being of student athletes, which ultimately you just followed the lead that the NCAA has given us for decades upon decades, because they've never cared about student athletes. They've always only cared about money. It's why they took so long implementing any kind of NIL or any kind of payment for players. But I just wish if we're going to do this, just be authentic and real about it. Just say we needed the money. We're capitalism, the economy, the market, just say what it is. Say that you're missing out because you aren't making the money that you could be making if your school joined another conference. I'd have a whole lot more respect for an athletic director or commissioner to just say this is in the best interest of us. And that this is why we're doing it. But stop pretending like it's in the best interest of your student athletes, because it's not. And these are probably some of the same people that say that NIL is getting out of hand and that it's ridiculous that players are wanting to be compensated all of that much. But it's not ridiculous for you to put them on a plane for 8 hours on a weekend and then suit them up and go play a game. And then you're going to tell them that they're requesting too much money. Just get out of my face with that. I'm just not believing you. So that's how I feel.
Well, no, you're right. Because, again, I don't remember who it was that was on the podcast a while back, but we talked about, I know we talked about a little bit last week, but which I knew. But anyway, so we talked about, it was simple. And you made a great point. USC, UCLA, Washington now, Oregon now. You got those 4 West Coast teams traveling to now Big Ten country, which does involve all the way practically to the East Coast with Rutgers and Penn State, and anybody else they want to feel the need to add down the road. Maryland is one, but so like say for example, maybe not so much football, but volleyball, soccer, the Olympic sports is what I call them. The Olympic sports. This is where I'm afraid it might be the Notre Dame podcast crew. This is where I'm afraid that these other sports may start having issues financially, simply because, as you mentioned, it's an excellent point. I'm not very familiar with a lot of these Olympic sports, but they do have midweek games, weekend games. So, I mean, they travel a lot, and yeah, Oklahoma, Texas, they should be safe to good to go. Farthest one out east is Florida. Whoopie doo. But for them, you got clear across the country. Then you got to come back and like you said, have class on Monday or Tuesday. But this is where I like the conference realignment to an extent. But the biggest concern for the other sports that's not football brings into play because we have, as you said, we have to consider everyone and we know we all are smart enough to realize football brings in the money to the university. We get that, but we've got to look at the other sports, and that's my only concern about this conference realignment, especially the Big Ten. I might have said the ACC earlier, the Big Ten, and here we are. Well, the ACC, for example, as well. Cal, Stanford, and SMU. There's nothing that speaks ACC about them, but whatever, and whatever, and but no, it's interesting. It's cool. The NIL is, you know, whatever, and I think Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he's could stay another year. You got 20, 25 mil in NIL deals. That I mean, why not stay one more year? Get paid a lot of money. I mean, what you think? What's your thoughts on the transfer portal? Now that I'm starting to really not like this thing.
I have mixed emotions about the transfer portal. I think that there are, again, pros and cons to everything. I do think that there needs to be some stipulations on it. I think that the idea of someone just not liking something and then transferring immediately is just like a complete and total joke. I think that there should be some like legalities on it. So I think like if your coach were to leave, then I think you should be able to enter the transfer portal. I think that there are, I just think that there's some different avenues in some ways that we could put some stipulations on it to where it's not like, oh, every year I just don't like this, so I'm going to leave. Like JT Daniels, you don't need to go to a new school every time that you decide that like you need a new outfit or something. Like I don't like the weather. Time to enter the transfer portal. Like I don't like that. I also don't love. I thought what happened last year with Dion and coming at I didn't love the way that all played out. I understand that when a coach takes a job that there's going to be like kids that want to leave. But when he basically walked in and like pushed them into the portal, like I also don't like that either. And I don't like the whole like I'm entering the portal, no contact, aka I already know where I'm going. So obviously there's been some tampering.
Well, of course.
And like we all know that tampering is going on, but there's no guidance on it. Even though it's illegal, like people are still doing it. And if we're gonna let people tamper and you can just get whoever you want from the transfer portal, then like y'all need to let Connor Stallions go and be in cheap because why do we have different standards for different areas of the game? Like it should be clear across the board. So I don't like the no limit. I don't like that's the case. It makes it feel very free agency to me. I do think that I think there's some reasons that you should be able to leave. I think like injuries and things of that nature, like,
absolutely.
Oh, I got hurt and I'm never going to be able to play at this level anymore, but I still want to play the game. Okay. I want to transfer. Like, I think that there's some ways that you should be able to leave. But the whole just like, I don't like it here, I'm going to go is mind boggling to me. And I just don't understand it. And I am literally a fan of a school who has benefited from the transfer portal. I think if you're a grad transfer, you should be able to leave. Like if you've stayed there for 4 years,
well, absolutely,
like go, which is exactly what Joe Burrow did. And so like, again, I think there's just gotta be some stipulations on it. I just think it's way too much of a free for all right now. And I think you're setting up kids to believe that that's the way that life works.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's just not. Even in the professional arena, like we see people request trades, but that doesn't always mean they get them.
Well, no.
And more times than not, you end up seeing them working out contracts and like their agents are doing all of these things. I just think kids these days just think that that's the way that it happens, and they're also just getting bad advice. Like you're listening to your great uncle Sam, who tore his ACL in 1964 and still thinks that if he hadn't, he'd be on the New York Jets. And he's telling you that you're a starter for a D1 SEC program, and that's just not reality. And it's okay if a coach looks at you and says like, "Hey, you have the talent, but like it's going to be a couple years."
Well, of
And
course.
like it's okay to want to earn that spot and not listen to your great uncle Sam that is telling you that you should be starting at the premier level right now. It's just not reality.
Well, you hit the nail on the forehead with that. It's setting them up to, excuse me, it's setting them up to be this society where it's this participation trophy thing.
Yep.
Growing up in football, I can guarantee you we weren't very good. We were not good at all. And so there's no such thing as a participation trophy. We just sucked it up. You were 2-8, and you were 2-8. I mean, it is what it is. And in bowling, the same thing. We won and we didn't win. Individual things, either you first or you didn't get nothing else. I mean, it is what it is. But now we live in a society where, well, we don't want to hurt little Johnny's feelings. He gave it his best all, and even though his best score was 12, here's a trophy. And I'm not sitting there saying we shouldn't be supportive, but at the same time, I mean, I love what you said. You're setting them up. Really, you're going to set them up to fail at the end of the day. But I liked it to an extent. I like it. I think it should be more beneficial for bench warmers. That's not going to play much. Maybe it suits them best. Maybe they can go somewhere to like, man, I was wide receiver for, I don't know, LSU or Oklahoma or Texas or somewhere. I don't care where you're at. I ain't gonna play here because the talent keeps getting better and better. So let's go to Purdue. Let's go to Illinois or Arkansas or somewhere that's you're not being getting those big time recruits out. So I like it to an extent, but I don't. Real quick, comments. Okay, spam one. Any spam ones, I'm sorry, you're not going to get on there. And any disrespectful ones, you're definitely not going to get on there. Shout out to, I can guarantee you that. Shout out to Tisha. It's my show. Shout out to Tisha, the co host of A Show Divided live on Wednesday nights. I'm pretty sure we probably said something that made her laugh, but shout out for her for joining on the conversation. Herb and Raj podcast, real quick. Mike is great. I'm pretty sure that's from Raj because Herb sometimes gets pretty jealous with me. I don't know why. No, great two brothers. Wonderful content. Give them a follow. What's this one is? Okay? So I've been missed. I missed you guys too. Mike is great, and there you go. Herb and Raj.
Thank you.
Okay, I need to know who is this? Which one is this? Is this Raj or Herb? Now Raj. Oh man, now we're getting blown up here. Let's go. She's not the co-host. She's the star. I don't know where we're going with this conversation but that's cool. Facts. Now I'm trying to figure out who we got here. Oh heck no! So this is Herb.
Hi Herb.
And then wonderful. So there you go. So you're making a lot of fans here.
Oh, thanks guys. Thanks for being here.
Keep them coming, guys. Questions for college football. No, Herb and Rod, you guys are probably getting prepped for your show, but keep them coming, especially because this is an SEC woman here, and you guys are Bama fans, so I know you guys got some come on, Rod, don't let them do that to you. Give Herbert Raj listen on live every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Central, and Miss Tisha, I believe their show is tomorrow night. On Wednesdays at 7. And even though I posted this one, yeah, let's do that. So there you go. I know. I'm guessing me. I don't know. Is this Herman Raj? Is this me or is this both or her?
I'm sure they mean you.
We'll find out. Okay, guys. Let's see here. Okay. Teacher's on a okay. Teacher's on Wednesday at 6 p.m. ish. I thought it was 7, but cool. 8 p.m. For Herman Raj on the Tuesday nights for sure. Great content from both shows. Herman Raj, you guys threw me off now. Oh, SEC. Of course, let's go talk some college football playoff. It does involve, some SEC teams. Who got snubbed? Florida State or Georgia? Who truly got snubbed? Let's put it that way.
Okay, I think they both got snubbed. If I'm being honest with you, but I think that I think I can have reasoning for both of them. I think my struggle with leaving Florida State out is every year that you have had the college football playoff, you've put in the 4 most deserving teams. You might have gaslit yourself into believing that y'all put in the 4 best teams, but you have 100% put in the 4 most deserving teams. There's no way in absolute hell that anyone who watched TCU last year struggle with Texas and Baylor and said they are one of the 4 best teams in the country. You never said that. You never said that.
I am going to tell you that I thought TCU last year should not have gotten in, period. Because what happened to Georgia, well, first of all, if Michigan didn't cheat, they probably actually would have won. But TCU was no match to Georgia at all. TCU, well, first of all, TCU, and I'm going to let you finish out because I apologize for cutting you off.
You're good.
TCU, I don't know, and this is where the consistency is with the committee. This is what the issue I have with the committee is. Yes, we expand the 12 teams next year. The 13th team, I guess you're just unlucky. But the thing is, TCU lost to Kansas State in the Big 12 championship game last year. Still made it. Whatever. Georgia lost to a really, really good Alabama team, a much better Alabama team since that team that struggled against, that lost to Texas, I should say, and then struggled the following week against South Florida. This Alabama team's a whole lot better than they were week, what was that, 2 and 3, I believe. So, yeah, week 2, that was the second week of the season. Week 2 against Texas, week 3 against South Florida. Georgia, and hear me out, guys. Jordan Travis, if it wasn't for his injury, I think Florida State makes it. Nobody wants to see a very struggling, that makes no sense, a really, really, really bad offensive team in the playoff because this would have been a TCU all over again.
I completely agree with you. I mean, I struggle because it feels like Florida State got shafted, and I don't think. Yes, the Jordan Travis injury is effective, but you also can't convince me that with a month to prepare and Tate Rodemaker at their quarterback that and their good defense that they've had all season long that they couldn't have put up a game against Michigan. You can't tell me that. The problem is if you wanted to put in Alabama, which they wanted to put in the SEC champ, okay, then you had to put in Texas because you value head-to-head. But the justification for putting in Texas and Alabama was saying we put in the 4 best teams. Yep. But if you put in the 4 best teams, you can't tell me that Georgia's not one of the 4 best teams in the country. You can't tell me that because they've been number 1 all season long and they lost by 3 to an Alabama team that has only consistently gotten better as the season went on. So this is where I'm frustrated about this whole thing. And here's what I just know to be fact. And like everyone can hate it, but it is what it is. They didn't put Florida State in because this was the only year that they were going to be able to do that. If next year we were not going to a 12-team playoff, They would have had to put Florida State in. But they cannot put Florida State in this year because it doesn't set a precedent moving forward. Because next year, every conference champion will be in. And everyone's upset. Like, they were like, they can't leave an SEC champion out. they could have left out any champion. There's 4 spots and 5 conference champions. There was always going to be one left out. But with all that being said, I just think the whole like we put in the 4 best teams is a lie, because you didn't put in the 4 best teams, because Georgia is one of the 4 best teams in the country. But you didn't put in the 4 most deserving teams either, because Florida State was without a doubt one of the most deserving teams in the country. I'm not mad about the matchups. Like, I was the person that last year during the national championship just was like filled with anger and rage that this was the last college football game that I got to watch because of how bad it was. I was like, the fact that I'm going to bed at halftime of the national championship is embarrassing. I completely agree that the 4 best was Michigan, Washington, Georgia, Alabama. I said that. There's a video all over my social media where I said that. I know you don't think Washington deserves to be there. I think those are the 4 best teams in the country. But you couldn't put in Alabama and not put in Texas, even though hot take, for a committee that really valued head-to-head. They also, if you looked at the rest of the rankings, didn't always value head-to-head. Like, for instance, Missouri was ranked significantly higher above LSU, but LSU beat Missouri head-to-head. And I understand that they're like, head-to-head is the tiebreaker. Move on with that bullshit, because I just don't care. Because Alabama only lost to Texas, but Texas also lost to Oklahoma.
Yep.
So I just think I personally think if you wanted to put the 4 best teams in there, you would have put Michigan, Washington, Georgia, Alabama. They were not willing to do that. I think they knew that they'd catch hell by doing that.
Right.
I don't know if they expected to catch as much hell as they've caught for leaving Florida State out. But I just think people were mad that you left out an undefeated conference champion and put in a 1-loss SEC champion. It doesn't help the narrative of the SEC gets favored and everything, and everyone loves us more. And even though I personally think we're the best conference in college football, and I don't see how you don't, Casey, but I get if I'm an ACC fan or I'm a Florida State fan, I get it. Like, I get why you hate us. It's also not Alabama's fault that they got in. So for all of them, like all the Florida State fans that want to yell at the Alabama fans, like, their team just went and did what they needed to do in an SEC championship and won a game. And it's not their fault that the playoff committee put them in. So they should just lay off.
Well, people have to remember, Alabama does what Alabama does. It's Nick Saban. Nick Saban is the best in the college football, and that's why he makes the money that he makes. That's why he has the rings on his fingers that he can't even add anymore at this point. But here's the thing that irritates me. But we go to next year, and next year I can guarantee that the 13th and the 14th and the 12th ranked teams are going to complain that, hey, we should deserve. Now we got to argue. Well, who's the 12th?
There's no way to solve this. We're going to argue.
There's not. No. And I'm not saying let's go for the FCS. I like how they do it, but that's way too many games. But you would have to eliminate, I think, some non-conference, and I'm not really in the mood for that right now. But the thing that irritates me, and I guess is practically you're telling us as fans, the committee did, Georgia truly wasn't their number one all year long. Because I can't believe that you have one game, and yes, Alabama was ranked 8th at the time, but you got one game that truly defined their season. From that 1 to that, where they finished 6, I believe. Yeah. 6. Ohio State was ahead of them. 1 to 6. That tells me that they truly did not believe that Georgia was their best team in the country the first 14 weeks of the season.
See, I think they do believe that. I think they do. I just think that there was zero justification for you. They couldn't leave them in. There was no way they were going to leave them in, because they weren't going to risk losing money by putting in a Florida State team that could potentially be bad. But I personally, I think the committee was in a lose-lose situation regardless. Right. And someone was going to get left out. the biggest thing I have with the committee, I think my biggest frustration is if you were going to punish Florida State for the Jordan Travis injury, then punish them before now. Like,
Yep.
you shouldn't have put them back in the top 4 if you didn't believe that they were going to be capable of hanging in that spot if they remained undefeated. So the committee kind of brought some of this on themselves. And then also, if you don't think that they can give Michigan a game, why'd you put them at 5? Like, there's just no way that you think they're better than Georgia without Jordan Travis. So it's just like, oh, we put you at 5 to pity you because like you were kind of close to getting in, but like not quite. But oh yeah, now you have to go pay the back-to-back national champs who are 29-1 in their last 30 games and are pissed off because they missed the playoffs. So
and
you'll
have fun.
That. Like, it's just, I just think it's a crock. I think the committee was in a lose-lose situation, but I think they kind of put themselves there. Like, you should have never, if the Jordan Travis injury really meant that much to you, then you should have never had him at 4. And if you thought we're going to put him back at 4 because Tate Rodemaker looks promising, well, you have to know that he was going to play in the playoff game.
Right.
So again, lose, but part of the losing is their own fault because they set themselves up for that.
Here's my take is, and I also have no proof, so any of you guys try to fact check me on this, you get luck. I don't have proof of this. I really believe that the committee assumed that they've already had their sheet out. Here's a game plan, that they're going to assume Georgia's going to take care of business, move on, and it is what it is. You probably would have had Georgia, Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, Washington, and Florida State. But when they realized, oh crap, Alabama won, now they're scrambling here. Texas and Washington. So previewing the college football playoff, Michigan, Alabama. This one's going to get interesting. I really believe Michigan's going to ride or die by the running game. Alabama is practically Jalen Milroe is going to be pretty much their key to success. Now, Texas and Washington, rematch from last year's Alamo Bowl game. Nobody really cared about. This game's going to be interesting. Washington's trying to prove that they're deserving. I mean, they came in, in the playoff once and got smothered, but I think they lost to Alabama that year. But Texas, I don't know. What's your take? I still believe it's going to be Alabama and Texas in the rematch. I don't see – could be reasons why I hate saying this being an OU fan, Texas, but I don't see Washington. I got to back up to what I say. Washington isn't good, and I don't think Texas is deserving as well, but they're in there, so I got to give them some credit. What's your take on – who do you have in the Final Four and playing for the national championship?
I actually have Alabama, Washington. I think Washington beats
Interesting.
Texas. I'm not a huge believer in Texas. Not a huge believer in Steve Sarkisian, if I'm being honest with you.
He's doing a good job staying away from the liquor, though.
Good, as he should. Good for him for that. But I can't get on board with Texas. I haven't been on board all year. I really, honestly, I thought they'd lose to Alabama.
Yep.
And here's the deal. That is impressive that they beat Alabama and they went to Alabama and beat them. I'm not taking anything away from them as an LSU fan. I know how hard that is to do. So like mad props for that. I just think that any Texas fan who believes that the Alabama team that they beat is the Alabama team that's playing in the playoffs is completely and totally delusional. I've always said that the biggest disadvantage LSU has had about the LSU-Alabama game is that it's always in November. And that is when Alabama peaks. It's when Nick Saban has his team all meshed together. It's when they all know what they're doing and everything's blending well. And they just know how to win games. And they have this mentality that they can't lose. And that mentality only strengthens as they enter postseason. In actuality, any other team that would have been in the position that they were in with Auburn those players and that team believes they've already lost. Alabama, no, it can be 4th and 67 and we're going to win this game. Like that's the way that their mindset works because that's the culture that Saban's created. And I think there were a lot of changes with that Alabama program in the offseason, and it was week 2. I mean, it was week 2. And I think you've got to give Saban time to cook. And this is not when I want to be playing next Saban. I personally, for the honestly, the Alabama Michigan game, I think Alabama's going to run over Michigan. I think I think it's going to be embarrassing. I think everyone is so big on Harbaugh, and I just think Nick is like over here being like, "Have y'all forgotten? Like, I am the GOAT. Like, I am the greatest that's in this sport right now." And he will, if nothing, out coach Harbaugh. But I think they have more talent on their side of the ball, if I'm being honest with you. I'd take Milroe over McCarthy any day.
Oh, absolutely.
No one wants to talk about the fact that Tate Rodemaker actually had more yards than JJ McCarthy the week that he played, but we don't have to go into that. But I think that game's going to be embarrassing. Washington, Texas, I have a little bit more I have some more question marks. I think it might actually be pretty evened out on both sides of the ball. I do think Washington's defense has come up with some pretty big stops throughout the season. Now, I'm not big on Pac-12 defense because for the most part of my life, it hasn't existed. It's just been shootout after shootout. But they have showed up this season in some moments that they had to, which historically speaking doesn't usually happen in the Pac. And I think that's the difference in that game. I think the battle test that they've gone through to beat Oregon twice, to beat a good quarterback in Bo Nix. I think Washington will just ultimately come out on top just because I think that they are the more battle-tested team. And everyone's going to be like, well, Texas played Alabama. Again, week 2 Alabama. And this Alabama, 2 different breeds of Alabama football. So y'all haven't seen battle tested whatsoever. And I'm excited for Texas to get in the SEC and actually understand what that looks like.
Well, and for the Texas fans, I've had some on the show, and nothing bad about them. But the deal is, everybody keeps saying, I don't think OU's ready. I really don't think Texas is ready either. I think it goes both ways. But I mean, again, Oklahoma may go in, and I'm not going to sit there and say they're going to go undefeated because that's not realistic by any means. Not right now. But I don't think I know I'm trying to find that comment. I don't think that Texas will just run in there and will take over either.
No, I don't either. And I just don't know that. I mean, at the end of the day, as much as we can hate it, I'm not okay, I'll add you back. As much as we can all hate it, it is still Alabama and Georgia's conference. So this whole idea of we're going to come in and run the conference, we don't care what you do week in and week out. If you can't beat those 2, you're just like everyone else. Now there is a little bit of hierarchy. There is this grandfathered in, the OGs of the SEC,
right.
They tend to get a little bit more respect, i.e. your LSUs, your Floridas. Our schools are given probably a little bit more benefit of the doubt than sometimes they should, but they've also earned that level of respect in the conference and across the country. And that's the part I think Oklahoma and Texas are going to have to realize is it's a gauntlet week in and week out, but you go through the gauntlet to get to the SEC championship gauntlet to then get to the playoff gauntlet. It never ends. And that's something that I think will be a little bit different. I'm not saying that I think Texas and OU play cupcakes every week, because that's also not what I'm saying, but it is a different breed, and I'll just leave it at that.
No, you're right. I mean, and even next year, I don't know Texas' schedule off the top of my head. and no reason to. But I mean, you look, for Oklahoma, for example, your home games, excluding Texas, because that's obviously, of course, down in Dallas. But you got Tennessee, you got Alabama, and you got South Carolina. Two of the three teams are really, really good. South Carolina, they got their moments. I really wish Spencer
I
Rattler
would
would have
dare to
been.
say that Tennessee also has their moments.
Exactly. Yeah. Tennessee came here. I don't know if that was Lincoln Riley's first year, if that was Bob Stoops' last. I don't remember. But it's been a while since Tennessee been here. Of course, we all remember the triple overtime game down in Knoxville, but um, the OU won in Baker's Heisman year. But, it's been a while since they came here, handled them both times. But, you know, Alabama's obviously going to be tough. They haven't been in OU since, I think they came here in 03, 02 or 03. But anyway, and then, of course, that's, all you listening out there real quick, sales pitch, live on the actual area where the stadium is, actually in Norman at the Galo Family Memorial Stadium, live on site podcast recording with Herman Raj and myself on that one. But anyway, side note, back to South Carolina, and I really was bummed that Spencer Rattler decided to declare. I really hoped that he would have came back one more year. Whatever. And then, of course, our road games in October for sure: Ole Miss, Auburn, LSU, and of course Missouri. And although, I mean, let's be honest, there's not an easy road game on that list. So,
not at all. I remember seeing y'all's schedule and being like, oof, like Oklahoma's got it rough.
the SEC is like, all right, well, here you go.
Exactly. Like, you wanted to play, come on over.
Yeah. I mean, even Texas, Texas, I think is a little slight easier, but they still, I think they got Florida and Georgia. And
yeah, I think they also, and this is just my, this was
got.
my 2 cents of what I saw when it all came out, was that Texas had already scheduled some of us, like that they had played LSU, 2019, 2020, and then, or didn't play in 2020, but had a scheduled, and then COVID. And then they, obviously played Alabama. So I was like, their schedule got a little bit manipulated, I think, just based on the teams that they'd played in recent history. Whereas we haven't really played Oklahoma in any. You were scheduled to play Georgia, and then they screwed that all up for you. So, but yeah, I think that's probably where that comes into play.
Real quick, I want to hurry because my laptop's probably going to burn if I keep it on Texas's website. Georgia, their home games: Georgia, Florida, Kentucky, Mississippi State. Neutral site with Oklahoma. Road games: Vanderbilt, Whoopidoo, Arkansas, and Texas A&M. So I mean, not easy, but they got some winnable games compared to Oklahoma's schedule.
Without a doubt.
So, yeah. But anyway, no, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, again, I'm glad the Big 12 we're done with them. Hate to end it that way, but it is what it is. And the SEC, if you're a realistic OU fan, we got to accept that next year's going to be a learning curve. 25 when Michigan comes into town, and that's going to be a fun one. But I think if 25 beyond, I think OU is going to come to town. It's that transition period, and I think OU fans are going to have to. We're not very realistic. You're going to run into a lot of them that they're just not realistic at all.
Okay, I think that's a lot of fan bases. I think every fan base has that group of people. I mean, there were LSU fans that this year were like, we're winning an Natty. And I'm like, y'all got to calm down. Like, no, we're not. We're just
exactly.
And, I just think that, which part of that too is when your coach comes in and immediately goes to an SEC championship in year one, you do have some expectations, and that's fair. And it felt like we backslid a little bit. And we definitely did defensively. But I also think, like, I'm sitting here sometimes as a fan, and I have to remind myself, like even 2020, I'm like, was so embarrassing. Like 2020 and 2021 were two of like the most embarrassing years as an LSU fan. And so, and I'm like, my dad will look at me and be like, you think that was bad? Like, I remember when we were atrocious and like playing in the Independence Bowl. So, every fan base likes to have this memory of like, oh, we've been good in the last however many years. But the reality is every school eventually is going to go through a good season and a bad season. When Alabama retires, or when Nick Saban retires, you don't know what is going to happen at Alabama. When Kirby retires at Georgia, I'm like, everyone wants to hate Georgia. I'm like, guys, do y'all not just remember, like, they were struggling 6, 7, 8 years ago. Like, calm down.
Well, even with Mark Richt, they weren't where they're at.
No, and I loved Rick. I'm like,
absolutely,
let him stay forever. But he wasn't winning you a natty. So just, it is what it is. But I think every fan base, especially SEC fan bases, you were told that you play in the best conference in college football. So your expectation should be to win a national championship. It doesn't look great when 3 schools have won one, in the last 10 years. And my school won 1, for crying out loud. Most of those have been by 2 programs. But I think it's easy to get delusional and to believe that that's what every school is supposed to do. But the reality is it's just not reality.
In the transition period, and then I'll wrap this thing up, is unless you're Nebraska, everyone goes through hard times. I feel for Nebraska. I still thought they should have stayed in the Big 12. But again, money speaks in college football. I said this a few years ago on the show. I ain't going to pull it up because I couldn't tell you what episode it was, and I'm not going to research it. But I've said it then. I'm going to say it pretty close now. It's not going to get to the NFL level when it comes to, well, I was going to say money, but it's getting there. To money-wise and just the growth of it. I still think college football is going to get there eventually. I don't know what that's going to look like, but college football is starting to really be a big role, and a lot of money into this thing. And I think it's just the beginning of, I don't know what, I can't even tell you what we're going to see in the future.
Yeah, it'll be, we're definitely entering a different era. I think that NIL and transfer portal are a whole thing, but I think one thing that people aren't really thinking about is we're about to enter a new generation of coaching. Saban will be retiring soon, as much as everyone thinks he's going to die on the sidelines. I think he'll retire. I think Miss Terry wants him. I think they're tired. And I did say this year, I said, if Alabama sneaks in and then wins a natty and then Nick retires, don't we all kind of win?
I think we all do.
So that's kind of what I'm secretly hoping happens. But he'll be out soon. Brian Kelly's older. He'll be out soon. You're about to enter this, honestly, Venables is older. Labo's getting older. Those guys.
Kirk Ferentz at Iowa's been there forever.
Yeah, he needs to go.
Yeah, he does.
You're about to enter the younger, I think, coaching areas where it is the Lincolns and the Dan Lannings. I think those are going to be the guys that you start seeing pop up, and which is good news and bad news. For a fan like me, it makes me nervous because I've still got one of the old school coaches, but some of the old school coaches, i.e. Nick, can still go in and win natties. So, but I don't think they enjoy this. I don't think they enjoy the NIL. I don't think they enjoy the transfer portal. I don't think the way that changes have happened in recruiting. And as much as they're trying to adapt, it's just not what they know, and change is hard for people. And especially when you've been in the industry as long as they have, it's just sometimes you love something and it changes too much and you can't hold on to it anymore. And I think that might be where we're headed in this next generation of coaching.
No, I'm with you on that. I think college football's I think college football is going to turn the corner on a lot of things. I think you nail it especially when it comes to coaches. You see a lot in the systems that's being ran and the defensives that still non-existent in some programs, i.e. Lincoln Riley. But as we wrap up the show, holidays are just around the corner. 13 days for all you shoppers out there for Christmas. 19 just until we turn a corner around. Miss Dailey, reflecting on 23. First, well, that makes no sense. Question number one. Question number one. What are some of your holiday traditions for Christmas? And then question 2 is reflecting back on 23. What were some of your highlights for this year?
Yeah, for sure. To be honest, I don't come from a big traditions family. My parents are divorced, and even before that, I didn't really have traditions. it wasn't until like about 7 or 8 years ago that I started spending Christmas with my dad's side of the family. Traditionally, I always spent it with my mom's side of the family, and now I solely spend it with my dad's side of the family. So we're not huge tradition people, which I mind, but I don't mind. I'm a little bit of a nomad. I'm the only one in my family that lives not within driving distance of everyone else. They all live pretty relatively close to each other. Most of my like super immediately family is all within like 45 minutes of each other. And then my brother lives about 4 hours away from them in North Louisiana. My whole family's in Houston. And then I'm all the way over here in Atlanta. So I've always been the nomad. I've always been a little bit of the black sheep. I've always been a little bit of like the wanderer. So for me, not having traditions just makes that easier. But that's pretty much, I mean, like we're not a very traditional family. 2023 was a really hard year for us. At the end of 2022, my dad was actually diagnosed with cancer. So the beginning of 2023 was brutal for our family. Like I said, my whole family lives in Houston, which thankfully is a really great place to live if you get diagnosed with cancer. And so I didn't see or talk to my dad for 8 weeks. He had 8 weeks of radiation and 8 weeks of chemotherapy. And he is now completely cancer-free, thank God. But so this year holds just a lot heavier of a weight because there's a lot less emphasis on like, what do you want? And, what can I get you? And like presents and things like that. We're really focusing on just being present with each other, being grateful that he's here, being grateful that the Lord blessed us with, an extension of his story. I always say like, I'm really glad that was a chapter, not the end of the book. And so I just am always like, keep writing, Dad. Like that's our little thing that I always say to him. So I would say that's really the big emphasis for us for the holidays this year is just being super, super grateful that we all get to be together.
That's awesome. That's what's up. For mine, we still got 19 days. I mean, anything can happen from now to 19 days. Hopefully not. Nothing too major. But, for me, it's probably like the year of uncertain. Last year, a lot of death in the family. A lot of death in the family last year. So it was a lot of, questions of uncertainty. And, even though we're as humans, growing up as a pastor's kid, you're supposed to be this oh so goody good.
I got you.
Yeah, I mean, supposed to be the oh so goody good kid, and nothing ever happens to you guys, and why you guys but nobody really realizes we're still human. But anyway, we all still bleed. We bleed the same blood. But anyway, I think the highlight for me this year, leading that into this year, I think I wouldn't say the year of uncertainty, but it's more so the year of waiting. I guess kind of uncertainty, but waiting. So back in May, I actually got it on of a actually were able to take a class abroad, study abroad in Israel, and so that was pretty neat. But true story, there was actually we were on top of the hill where Samson's tomb and where his dad and Samson's buried at Samson's tomb, and Gaza sent off a missile, and 1 kilometer above our heads it was a missile. So that kind of wasn't very fun, but it was also an eye opening just because the Western culture for us here in America is we got it made. You go in the Middle East or third world countries. I'm not saying every third world country is they're always bombing each other, stuff like that. But especially in Israel, it's as we know now, it's always a fighting war. So that was pretty cool. But no, I think Dad's health and everything else, it's just a lot of uncertainty. Up and downs, and we thought we had it good, and now he's back down again. So a lot of uncertainty and a lot of questioning, which looks like to be entering 24. So, different stories, but in the end, it's all going to work out one way or another, and we'll just keep plugging away at it.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Last one, and then I'm going to let you go on. Off of this one is not a lot of people talk about Jesus, and I know that I don't. I do some homework. I don't go into this whole diagram of you got to dissect everybody's names on Google, and I'm not going to do that. But usually Twitter or X, whatever you call it, I try to get the basics. Um, Bio header, whatever they call it nowadays. Obviously, a Jesus believer, which I applaud you for that. At least, definitely for sure, letting it be known because not everybody's doing that these days. Um, what's your relationship like, and what was it that made him known to you when you took that walk?
Yeah, so I was a pastor's kid growing up.
What denomination, if you don't mind me asking?
Non-denominational.
Very nice.
The closest I would say was like Assembly of God, but
Gotcha.
even then we're still pretty non-denominational. And then my dad quit and started coaching, and then he went back into ministry my senior year of high school, and then was in ministry up until 2020, and then is not anymore. But if I'm being honest with you, I think that there was this there is this idea that like we just have it together because we're pastors or we're pastors' kids, and like there's almost this idea that we're like grandfathered in because of that. And I think that can even translate into our own walks. Like I know that there were times that I was just like, oh, my dad's got it. Like I'm fine.
For real though.
I want like, yeah, I'm like, it's all good. No big deal. And honestly, last year when my dad and I personally have walked through hell since 2020, with a bunch of different things that are still hanging in the balance, things that still are not resolved. But 2023, I've been watching my dad go through hell for 3 years, and then he gets diagnosed with cancer. And honestly, I just threw my hands up and I was like, you know what? I think I'm done. Like I'm done with you because I don't believe you. Every like real, honest, authentic conversation that you would have with like a friend who betrayed you or like a spouse that cheated on you, like anything of that nature, I had that conversation with the Lord, and I was just like, hey, like, I don't believe you. I think you're a liar. I don't think you are who you say you are. I don't believe you.
Right.
And my dad obviously like walks through this whole cancer journey, and I'm bitter and angry, and my dad is just like sick and feels like he's dying because he was literally dying. And on the tail end of it, the first time I got to visit him, we were in the car driving, and he said, I was like, I think I was asking, I actually, and I made a comment about someone's theology. I made a comment about a pastor actually in my city who made a comment about like what he believed about the Bible, and his dad had just recently passed away, and his dad was like a mega church pastor. And I won't say names, but if you like know, then you know.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. And I said, Dad, like, I was like, I wonder how he felt about his son, like not believing the same way that he believed. And my dad said, Joy, like, I think he just loved his son. Like, I think that was just enough. And my dad said, I don't think you understand like what it's like when you like, we hear like, oh, it's okay. Like you're going through a hard time. Like just pray about it. My dad's like, what do you do when you can't pray? Like, what do you do when you can't pray? What do you do when you can't read? My dad's like, my head was in a toilet for 8 weeks. Like I wasn't praying. I wasn't worshiping. I wasn't reading my Bible. I wasn't doing any of that. And yet like he was still there. Like he never left me. Like he never abandoned me. He sat with me on the bathroom floor. And like, I wasn't any less loved in that moment. And I wasn't any more loved when I was reading my Bible, when I was praying. Like I was loved the exact same in both of those places. And I remember I just remember sitting in the car and just being like, holy cow. And him saying, Joy, in the worst moment of humanity, when Adam sinned, his first question is like, where are you? And that was not oh snap, Adam sinned and now I've lost him.
Right.
That was God saying, like, when did we get distanced?
Mm-hmm.
Like, when did this relationship become disproportionate to what I created it to be? And then his next question was, who told you you're naked? Who lied to you? Who deceived you?
Mm-hmm.
Who mistold you? And then he says, here's the way. You've done this, but I can make it better. So here's this. And let's go for a walk. Like, in the midst of humanity's worst moment, all God wanted to do was take a walk. That's all he wanted. He just said, like, look, we screwed it up, but I'm just going to take a walk with you. And that has really just shifted, like, my paradigm and my belief about the Lord. I think I also have always had this idea that reading the Old Testament always kind of scared me, because you see him as this God that is evil and manipulative and judgmental and hateful. And then the scripture of like Jesus is God. Jesus was the perfect representation of who God is.
Mm-hmm.
So I refuse to believe anything about God that I don't see in the life of Jesus. And all I see in him is mercy. All I see in him is grace. Yep. All I see in him is love. And all I see in him is truth, and not half grace, half truth. I see 100% truth and 100% grace. And that is the Jesus that I've come to know. And that's the Jesus that I go to bed at night knowing that I am fully, completely, and perfectly loved, no matter what I did today, no matter who I pissed off on Twitter, no matter what word I dropped, no matter who I flipped off in the car. Is that all Jesus-like behavior? No, but it's also not my job to fix me. It's Jesus's job to fix me. It's just my job to be in proximity to Jesus and let him. And so that's kind of all. But if I'm being really honest with you, that's been within the last year. That's been within the last 8, 9, 10 months. And it took being that angry and that mad and that bitter and that hurt with him to get to that point in my relationship where I just know that I'm loved. Like,
absolutely.
Anything, I just know that I'm loved. So that's kind of where I'm at. But that wasn't this lifetime journey. That was the last year of my life, honestly.
You know, it's not funny like a ha-ha funny, but, you know, it's funny because, you know, practically the same on my end, because, you know, my dad had major stroke in 20 during the pandemic, whatever you want to call it. And, you know, practically wasn't for sure if he's going to make it out. Of course, you know, you couldn't go into the hospitals because everything was locked down and had to wear a mask and all that bumbo jumbo. And I'm not disrespecting anybody that lost lives during COVID. I know there's a lot of people that lost their lives during COVID, or because of it. But so anyway, you know, ever since then, you know, his mind's shot, and, you know, long term he can remember everything up until his stroke, and after that he can't remember much. And short term is not there much. But, you know, last year we had a Thunder game. Might have been a Thunder game, might have been a concert. I can't remember what it was. Down at the Paycom, and we had to work it, and so my boss and I were walking around managing, making sure everything was, you know, organized, whatever. And so got a call from my mom, and she was like, "Hey, you know, your grandmother, my dad's mom, they put her on hospice." Still never knew really got the answer, but what really caused it, and it doesn't matter now. But anyways, so I'm like, all right. Well, I was on the southwest side of the arena. I know a lot of people don't know what I'm talking about, and that's fine, but just bear with me. And literally, I was walking out by myself, try to hold back my tears, simply because, you know, I'm close to my dad. I'm close to his parents. My grandpa's passed on, but and I had the conversation, like, you know, God, you know, real quick. I was like, God, I don't know what you're trying to do. And my exact word was that, I don't know what you're trying to do, but this isn't cool. Like, dude, this sucks. I'm like, and I call him out, like, I ain't questioning you. I don't, you know, but this sucks. Like,
Oh,
dude,
I
this
was questioning.
yeah, like this sucks. I don't, I know there's a God, but I'm questioning like, what is this about? You almost took my dad, or you still am. Now you're trying to take my grandma, the two closest people I've left on this earth that I'm really, really close to. And dude, what's up with this? 4 months later, because she passed away in June, she didn't last very long in hospice. She passed away, and then did her service for her. My dad said, "Do you mind?" I was like, "No, Dad, I got you." Did her service, and fast forward, death right after death after death after her. Cousin commits suicide, and the list goes on. Then like I said, going to Israel in May, that was pretty cool. But see at Galilee real quick. I'm like, God, I know you're there. I need you to like practically reveal yourself, like show me something, like it's gonna be okay. And the song Waymaker came on, and so I guess that was the answer. But no, I mean, even through our questioning, real quick, and then wrap this thing up is us as pastor kids, obviously you understand is oh the okay the everything happens for you guys, it's all good, this that and something else, put on your happy face. And somebody called me, it's like, if you truly believe in God, why don't you just pray for a increase in your salary? Well, yeah, I do that, but just because you don't do it doesn't mean whatever else. But anyway, so no, I like your story, and I think it's an eye opener. I think a lot of people really need to realize is, we're all gonna have a heartache, one or two, and yeah, we are gonna have this conversation with him, and God knows, he knows what we're about to speak
It's a
before we even say
relationship.
it. Exactly.
He's
Yeah.
not this far off distant person.
No.
Like it's a relationship the same way that I have relationships with friends and I have relationships with
Hmm.
family. And if I wasn't authentic with him and I wasn't real with him, it's not like he doesn't already know. It's not like he doesn't already know what I'm thinking. It's not like he doesn't already know
Yeah,
what's
because
in
he
my heart.
knows our words
So,
before we even speak them.
yeah. So when I throw up my middle finger in the air and tell him that that's how I feel about him, he already knows that. Like
Right.
we act like we're doing God a favor by not like just being honest. I'm like,
Hmm.
y'all act like he doesn't already know that that's what you're thinking and
Yeah.
that's what you're feeling and that's like every emotion that he knows that you're encountering. So yeah, I'm probably a little bit more like the religious people don't really like me anymore because now I'll just like say how I feel. But I've never been real, like I said, black sheep wanderer. Never really fit
Right.
in that part anyway. So I was always I was the pastor's kid that they were worried about. Um, and they'll probably be worried about me until they see me in heaven. And then they'll be like, oh, she
You made
wasn't
it.
that bad. Like maybe there was something we didn't know. And I'm like, yeah, and he's gonna recognize my voice a lot
Hmm.
quicker than he'll recognize yours. Wow, I'm being really judgmental about church people right now, but that's just the reality of it.
No, it is, and Christianity's it's a relationship and not a religion, and at times we fail to remember that or remind ourselves that. So I applaud you for it, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Prayers to your dad, because I know in different realms, of course, but I know that feeling. So
Yeah, prayers to
no,
yours as well.
it's not fun.
At all.
Where can all the listeners find you at, and
Yeah.
comment on your wonderful coffee mugs?
On Twitter, I'm at Dailey Joy, Dailey Joy, F, I believe. And then on Instagram, I'm just at Dailey Joy. Also tune into our podcast, the MBG podcast. We go, ours airs every Wednesday. It comes out. We record on Monday and Tuesday nights, and then it comes out on Wednesdays. So listen there for all your college football content. That's where I talk about college football the most, for sure.
Give her a follow, give them a follow, give Casey a follow. All of his information, I believe, is from the previous episode, but if not, give him a follow as well. Miss Dailey Joy, it was wonderful having you on. It was a blast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was so fun.
Absolutely. All new episodes drop on Thursdays. If I don't get one out, have a Merry Christmas. We'll see you all in 2024.